The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Maple Ridge Boulevard, one of the wealthiest streets in the city. Officer Marcus Kane sat in his patrol car, eyes scanning every vehicle that passed. His radio crackled with routine calls, but his attention locked onto a sleek black Mercedes that turned onto the street. Behind the wheel sat Diane Foster, a 52-year-old woman with silver streaks in her natural hair, dressed in a navy blue blazer. She had just left a meeting downtown and was heading home after a long day. The music played softly through her speakers, a jazz melody that helped her unwind. Marcus flipped on his lights. The red and blue flashed against the Mercedes as it slowed and pulled to the curb. He stepped out of his patrol car, adjusting his belt, his face set in a hard expression. His boots hit the pavement with purpose as he approached the driver's side window. Diane rolled down her window, her hands visible on the steering wheel. She had done this before, knew the routine, understood the unspoken rules that kept situations like this from exploding. License and registration, Marcus demanded, his tone sharp, his eyes already judging. Of course, officer. Diane reached slowly toward her glove compartment, narrating each movement. I'm reaching for my registration now. My license is in my purse, on the passenger seat. Marcus watched her every move, his hand resting near his weapon. She handed him the documents through the window, her expression calm despite the tension crackling in the air. He glanced at the papers, then back at her, his jaw tightening. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. May I ask why you stopped me, officer? I wasn't speeding, and my tags are current. I said step out of the vehicle. His voice rose, sharp and commanding. Now. Diane took a slow breath and opened her door, stepping onto the sidewalk. She stood with her hands at her sides, visible, non-threatening. I have every right to know why I've been stopped. This vehicle was reported stolen, Marcus stated, his eyes cold. I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. Stolen? Officer, this is my car. I've owned it for 3 years. If you run the plates properly, you'll see everything is legitimate. Turn around, he repeated, pulling out his handcuffs. The metal gleamed in the sunlight. I'm a judge in this city, Diane said, her voice steady but firm. Judge Diane Foster. You can verify this. Please, just check your system again. Marcus laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. Sure you are. And I'm the mayor. Turn around, or I'll add resisting arrest to your charges. A few neighbors had started to gather, phones out, recording. Diane noticed them from the corner of her eye but kept her focus on the officer. She knew that one wrong move, one moment of panic, could turn this situation deadly. I'm not resisting, officer. I'm simply asking you to verify the information before you make a mistake that will cost both of us. But Marcus had already grabbed her arm, spinning her around roughly. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists, too tight, biting into her skin. He pushed her toward his patrol car, his grip unnecessarily forceful. You people always have excuses, he muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear. Thinking you can drive cars like this, live in neighborhoods like this. Diane said nothing more. She had learned long ago that some battles couldn't be won on the street. She sat in the back of the patrol car, her head held high, her mind already working through what would come next. At the station, Marcus processed her with the same contempt. He took her fingerprints, her photograph, logged her belongings. Other officers watched, some with curiosity, others with discomfort. One younger officer, Tom Hayes, approached Marcus at the desk. Hey, Kane, did you run a full check on that vehicle? The system's been glitchy today. I don't need a lecture, Hayes. Do your job, I'll do mine. Tom backed off, but his eyes lingered on Diane as she sat calmly in the holding area, her posture straight, her face composed. Hours passed. Diane made her phone call, spoke briefly to her assistant, gave simple instructions. She didn't yell, didn't demand special treatment. She simply waited, knowing that truth had a way of surfacing, even when buried under prejudice. They released her late that evening after the vehicle check finally came back clean, after someone higher up made a phone call, after the paperwork became too complicated to ignore. Marcus barely looked at her as she collected her belongings. "You're free to go," he said flatly, no apology, no acknowledgement of his error. Diane met his eyes for a long moment. "I'll see you soon, Officer Kane." 2 days later, Marcus walked into Courtroom 7 for a preliminary hearing on a case he had worked. He had arrested a young man for drug possession, and today was the first appearance. He chatted with the prosecutor, confident, relaxed, already thinking about lunch. The bailiff called the court to order. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Diane Foster." Marcus looked up, and the blood drained from his face. Walking through the side door in full judicial robes was the woman he had handcuffed on Maple Ridge Boulevard. Diane Foster took her seat at the bench, her expression neutral, professional. His legs nearly gave out. The prosecutor beside him noticed his sudden pallor. "Kane, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Marcus couldn't speak. His mind raced, panic flooding his chest. He had arrested a judge. He had handcuffed her, mocked her, refused to listen. Every word he had said came rushing back, every rough movement, every assumption. Diane surveyed the courtroom, her gaze eventually landing on Marcus. She held his stare for 3 seconds that felt like an eternity, then looked down at her files. "We have several matters on the docket today," she began, her voice clear and authoritative. "But before we proceed, I need to address something with the court." The room fell silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a moment. 2 days ago, I was pulled over by an officer from this city's police department while driving my personal vehicle. I was accused of driving a stolen car, despite providing proper documentation. I was handcuffed, arrested, and held for several hours before being released without charges. The officer involved is present in this courtroom today. Marcus felt every eye turned toward him. His throat closed up, his hands trembled. "As an officer of this court and as a citizen of this city, I want to say this clearly. Bias exists. Prejudice exists. It shapes decisions, influences actions, and destroys lives. Today, I could use my position to retaliate, to embarrass, to punish. But that's not justice. That's revenge." She paused, letting her words settle over the room like a weight. "Officer Marcus Kane, please stand." Marcus stood on shaking legs, his face burning with shame and fear. "I am recusing myself from any case in which you are a witness or participant. I have filed a formal complaint with the police department and the city's civilian oversight board. Your actions will be reviewed, and there will be consequences. But those consequences will come through proper channels, through the system we have built to ensure accountability." She looked directly at him, her expression neither angry nor forgiving, simply resolute. "You saw a black woman in an expensive car and assumed criminality. You refused to listen, refused to verify, refused to see me as a person deserving of respect and due process. Let's talk today. Not just with you, but with every officer who thinks that badge gives them permission to treat people as less than human based on the color of their skin." The courtroom remained silent. Marcus wanted to disappear, wanted to defend himself, but no words came. He had no defense. "This court stands for justice," Diane continued, addressing everyone now. "Real justice means holding everyone accountable, including those who enforce our laws. It means constant vigilance against our own biases, our own assumptions. It means choosing to see the humanity in every person who stands before us." She nodded to the bailiff. "Officer Kane, you're dismissed from this courtroom. Another judge will handle your cases going forward. The rest of today's docket will proceed as scheduled." Marcus walked out, his career hanging by a thread, his certainty shattered. The other officers in the hallway avoided his eyes. He had become a cautionary tale, a reminder that power without accountability leads only to injustice. In the weeks that followed, Marcus faced a 30-day suspension and mandatory bias training. The video from the neighbors' phones went viral, sparking conversations across the city about policing and prejudice. Some defended him, but most couldn't ignore what they saw, a pattern repeated too many times, in too many places. Diane Foster continued her work on the bench, her reputation strengthened by her restraint and her clarity. She didn't seek vengeance or glory. She simply demanded what everyone deserved: dignity, fairness, and justice. On the street, in courtrooms, in police stations, change came slowly. But it came. And it started with one woman who refused to be diminished, who stood tall even in handcuffs, who knew that real power lay not in retaliation but in the unwavering pursuit of what was right. The gallows truth rang out clearly. Justice delayed is justice denied, but justice served with wisdom and courage becomes a light that guides others forward, even through the darkest moments of prejudice and pain. The fight continued, but so did the hope.